First contact and betrayal. The vast expanse of space stretched before Captain Elara Chen as she guided the Earth exploration vessel Horizon through uncharted territory. After months of uneventful travel, the ship's sensors suddenly lit up, detecting an anomaly that made Elara's heart race with excitement. "All hands to stations," she commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We may have just made first contact." As the Horizon approached the source of the anomaly, a massive structure came into view. It was unlike anything Elara or her crew had ever seen. A sprawling space station that seemed to defy the laws of physics, its architecture a mesmerizing blend of organic curves and crystalline geometries. "My God," whispered Dr. Marcus Reynolds, the ship's xenobiologist. "It's beautiful." Before Elara could respond, a transmission crackled through the ship's communications system. The language was unlike anything they'd ever heard, a melodic series of chirps and trills that somehow conveyed meaning directly to their minds. "Greetings, travelers," the voice seemed to say. "We are the Zarquin. Welcome to our home." Over the next few weeks, Elara and her crew found themselves immersed in a whirlwind of cultural exchange. The Zarquin were a highly advanced species, their technology centuries ahead of humanity's. They were graceful, ethereal beings with iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the cosmos. Among the Zarquin, one individual stood out to Elara. Zira, a young scientist, was endlessly curious about humans and their ways. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Elara found herself looking forward to their conversations more and more each day. "Your species is fascinating, Elara," Zira said one evening as they stood in the station's observation deck, watching distant stars shimmer. "You've accomplished so much in such a short time. There's a resilience to humans that we Zarquin admire." Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest at Zira's words. "We're not so different, I think," she replied. "We both seek to understand the universe and our place in it." As the days passed, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Zarquin elders were becoming increasingly evasive in their discussions of technology sharing, and she often caught them whispering among themselves, their expressions troubled. It was Zira who finally revealed the truth. She came to Elara's quarters late one night, her usual vibrant colors muted with fear. "Elara, you're in danger," Zira whispered urgently. "The elders, they've been lying to you, to all of us." Over the next hour, Zira unveiled a shocking conspiracy. The Zarquin weren't the benevolent species they appeared to be. They were facing extinction due to a genetic disorder, and they saw humans as a solution, a source of compatible DNA that could save their species. "They plan to abduct your crew," Zira said, her voice trembling. "They'll experiment on you, trying to find a cure. I couldn't let that happen. Not to you." Elara's mind reeled with the implications. "We have to warn my crew, get back to the Horizon." But it was too late. Alarms blared throughout the station, and Elara could hear the sound of fighting in the corridors. "Go," Zira urged, pushing Elara towards a hidden passage. "This will lead you to your ship. I've disabled the station's defenses, but you don't have much time." Elara hesitated, looking back at Zira. "Come with us," she pleaded. Zira shook her head, her eyes filled with sadness. "I can't. My place is here, trying to change things from within. Now go." With a heavy heart, Elara raced through the passage. She managed to reach the Horizon and evacuate most of her crew, but the cost was high. Several of her team were left behind, and as the ship fled into the depths of space, Elara couldn't shake the image of Zira's face, knowing the young Zarquin had likely sacrificed everything to save them. As the Horizon limped away, its systems damaged from the hasty escape, Elara made a silent vow. She would find a way to expose the truth about the Zarquin, and somehow she would return to save Zira and those left behind. Little did Elara know, her actions had set in motion a chain of events that would change the fate of both their species forever. As the Horizon disappeared into the vastness of space, Zira faced the wrath of her people, branded a traitor for choosing to side with the humans. The stage was set for a cosmic drama of betrayal, redemption, and the indomitable spirit of two individuals from different worlds, bound together by a moment of compassion in the face of treachery. Echoes of defiance. 6 months after their harrowing escape from the Zarquin station, Captain Elora Chen found herself standing before the United Earth Council, her jaw clenched as she listened to their decision. Captain Chen, while we acknowledge the potential threat posed by the Zarquin, we cannot condone a rescue mission based solely on your testimony and limited evidence. The risk to Earth is too great. Ilara's fists tightened at her sides. With all due respect, counselors, we can't abandon our people, or the Zarquin who helped us. Zira risked everything. Enough. The lead counselor's voice boomed through the chamber. This matter is closed. You are hereby relieved of duty pending further investigation. Dismissed. As Ilara stormed out of the council chambers, her mind raced. She wouldn't, let this end here. Too many lives hung in the balance. Captain, a voice called out. Ilara turned to see Dr. Marcus Reynolds jogging to catch up with her. It's just Ilara now, Marcus, she said bitterly. They made sure of that. Marcus's eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Maybe not. Listen, I've been working on something. A way to find the Zarquin station again. Ilara's eyebrows shot up. How? Remember those strange energy readings we picked up just before we fled? I've been analyzing them. They're unique. A quantum signature unlike anything in our databases, if we can build a detector sensitive enough. Hope flayed in Ilara's chest for the first time in months. We could track them across the galaxy. Marcus nodded eagerly. Exactly. But we'd need resources, a ship. Leave that to me, Ilara said, a plan already forming in her mind. How soon can you have this detector ready? Give me a week. Ilara allowed herself a small smile. Then we've got work to do. Over the next 7 days, Ilara called in every favor she had. She reached out to old academy friends, former crewmates, even a few less than legal contacts she'd made during her years in space. Slowly but surely, a plan took shape. On the 7th night, Ilara stood in a dimly lit hangar on the outskirts of New Seattle. Before her loomed the silhouette of a ship, smaller than the horizon, but sleeker, built for speed and stealth. She's called a Spectre, a gruff voice said from behind her. Ilara turned to see Captain Yuki Tanaka, an old friend and sometime rival from her academy days. Officially, she doesn't exist. Unofficially, she's the fastest thing this side of Andromeda. Ilara clasped Yuki's hand firmly. Thank you. I owe you one. Yuki shook her head. After what happened on Titan, consider us even. Just bring our people home. As the small crew Ilara had assembled began loading supplies onto the Spectre, Marcus arrived, lugging a heavy case. It's done, he said, patting the case proudly. It's not pretty, but it'll work. Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. This is our last chance. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time. She looked around at the faces of her makeshift crew. There was Marcus, of course, his eyes alight with scientific curiosity. Lieutenant Zara Okafor, weapons specialist, and one of the few survivors from the horizon. Engineer Raj Patel, his hands already itching to explore the Spectre's systems. And finally, Lex Zong, former Black Ops turned freelance pilot, their ticket through any potential firefights. No one moved. No one spoke. Their determination was palpable. All right then, Ilara said, squaring her shoulders. Let's go save our friends. As the Spectre lifted off, cloaked by the cover of night, Ilara felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. They were now fugitives, disobeying direct orders from Earth Command. But the alternative, abandoning Zira and the others to their fate, was unthinkable. For weeks, they followed the faint quantum trail left by the Zarquin station. They skirted the edges of known space, dodging patrols and following leads. With each passing day, Ilara's worry for Zira grew. What horrors had she faced for her act of betrayal? Finally, after almost a month of searching, Marcus's detector lit up like a supernova. "I've got it," he shouted, his voice crackling with excitement over the ship's comms. Coordinates locked in. As Lex guided the Spectre towards their target, the crew prepared for the unknown. Weapons were checked, stealth systems primed, and a tense silence fell over the ship. When they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sight that greeted them stole the breath from Ilara's lungs. The Zarquin station hung in space before them, but it was transformed. Gone were the elegant, flowing lines. Now it bristled with weapon emplacements, its once translucent surfaces turned opaque and foreboding. "My God," Zara whispered. "What have they done to it?" Before anyone could respond, a familiar melody of chirps and trills filled the bridge, a Zarquin transmission. But unlike a welcoming message from months ago, this one radiated menace. "Attention, human vessel," the voice resonated in their minds. "You have entered restricted space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Ilara's hand hovered over the comms panel. This was it, the moment of truth. Everything hinged on what she said next. Taking a deep breath, she opened a channel. "This is Ilara Chen of Earth. We've come for our people, and for those among you who seek freedom. We know the truth about what's happening here." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, just as Ilara's hope began to fade, a new voice came through, weaker, strained, but achingly familiar. "Ilara." Zora's voice was barely a whisper. You came back." Joy and relief flooded through Ilara, quickly followed by rage as she realized what Zira's weakened state implied. "Zira, are you all right? What have they done to you?" "No time," Zira gasped. "The elders, they're mad with desperation. They'll destroy us all rather than let the truth be known. You have to." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by the harsh tones of the first voice. "You were warned, humans. Now, face the consequences of your defiance." The space around the Spectre lit up as the station's weapons came to life. Lex's hands flew over the controls, sending the ship into a series of dizzying, evasive maneuvers. Stealth systems failing. Raj called out from engineering. "We can't take much more of this." Ilara's mind raced. They were outgunned, outmanned, and out of options. But she hadn't come this far to fail now. As energy blasts rocked the ship, a desperate plan formed. "Lex, can you get us close to the station? Right up against its hull." The pilot's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. "It's suicide. But, yeah, I can do it." "Good, Zara. Prep the boarding pods. Raj, I need you to overload our shield generators. Create the biggest electromagnetic pulse you can." As the crew scrambled to follow her orders, Ilara turned to Marcus. "Your detector, can you modify it to find Zira's specific quantum signature?" Marcus nodded, already pulling tools from his belt. "Give me 2 minutes." The next moments were a blur of action. The Spectre screamed towards the Zarquin station, alarms blaring as its systems were pushed far beyond their limits. Just before impact, Lex pulled up, skimming the station's surface. "Now," Ilara shouted. A blinding flash erupted from the Spectre as its shields overloaded. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the station, momentarily disrupting its systems. In that instant of darkness, 4 boarding pods shot out from the ship, latching onto the station's hull. As Ilara and her team cut their way inside, she felt a fierce determination unlike anything she'd experienced before. They were outnumbered and in hostile territory, but they had the element of surprise and the righteousness of their cause. "Remember," she told her squad as they moved deeper into the station, "we're here to rescue, not for revenge. Stay focused." With Marcus's modified detector leading the way, they navigated the twisting corridors of the station. Signs of conflict were everywhere, scorch marks on walls, barricades hastily erected and just as hastily abandoned. It seemed their arrival had sparked something among the Zarquin population. Finally, the detector led them to a heavily fortified door. "She's in there," Marcus whispered, his face pale with worry. Zara stepped forward, setting a breaching charge. "Ready when you are, Captain." Ilara took a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever lay beyond. "Do it." The door blew inward with a thunderous roar. Through the smoke and debris, Ilara caught a glimpse of familiar iridescent skin. Zira lay strapped to some kind of medical apparatus, her once vibrant colors now dull and faded. "Ilara." Zira's voice was weak, disbelieving. "You're really here." As Ilara rushed to Zira's side, alarms blared throughout the station. The element of surprise was gone. Now, it was a race against time. "We're getting you out of here," Ilara said as she worked to free Zira from her restraints. "All of you." For in the room with Zira were others, humans and Zarquin alike, all subjects of the Elder's desperate experiments. As Marcus and Raj worked to release the other prisoners, Ilara lifted Zira into her arms. "I knew you'd come," Zira whispered, her head resting against Ilara's shoulder. "I never lost faith." Ilara's heart swelled with emotions she couldn't quite name. "I made a promise," she said softly. "I don't break my promises." As they made their way back through the station's winding corridors, they encountered pockets of resistance, but also unexpected allies. Many of the younger Zarquin, inspired by Zira's defiance and the humans' return, had risen up against the Elders. "The station is tearing itself apart." Lex's voice crackled over the comms. "Whatever you're doing in there, it's working. But we need to leave now. This whole place could blow at any minute." Ilara looked at the ragtag group of survivors they'd assembled, human and Zarquin, united in their desire for freedom. "Change of plans," she said. "We're going to need a bigger boat." As they fought their way to the station's hangar bay, Ilara realized that this rescue mission had become something far greater. It wasn't just about saving a few individuals anymore. They were witnessing the birth of a revolution, one that could reshape the relationship between their species forever. With alarms blaring and the station shuddering around them, Ilara made a choice that would alter the course of galactic history. They commandeered a Zarquin ship, large enough to carry all the survivors and then some. As they fled the disintegrating station, Ilara looked out at the stars, Zira's hand clasped tightly in her own. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with political fallout and the challenges of bringing two vastly different species together. But as she gazed at Zira, seeing the spark of hope rekindled in those alien eyes, Ilara knew that together, they could face anything the universe threw at them. This was more than a rescue. It was the dawn of a new era, one of cooperation, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. The Zarquin ship, filled with the seeds of a new future, disappeared into the depths of space, leaving behind the wreckage of old prejudices and fears. Ilara Chen, once a disgraced captain, now found herself at the helm of something far greater than she could have imagined. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Echoes of revelation. The stolen Zarquin ship, christened Unity by its diverse crew, drifted through the cosmic void, a beacon of hope carrying an impossible alliance. Captain Ilara Chen stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic star map before her. They were in uncharted territory, both literally and figuratively. "Any luck decrypting those files, Marcus?" Ilara called out, not taking her eyes off the swirling galaxies projected in front of her. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, hunched over a console covered in alien symbols, grunted in frustration. "It's slow going. The Zarquin encryption is like nothing I've ever seen, but I think I'm close to cracking their historical database." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. They had rescued Zira and other prisoners, both human and Zarquin, but their mission was far from over. The truth behind the Zarquin's desperate actions needed to be uncovered if there was any hope for lasting peace. As if summoned by her thoughts, Zira glided onto the bridge. The young Zarquin scientist had been recovering slowly, her iridescent skin gradually regaining its luster. She moved to Elara's side, her large, expressive eyes reflecting the starlight. "You're troubled," Zira said softly, the musical quality of her voice sending a shiver down Elara's spine. Elara sighed, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "We're fugitives, Zilura, hunted by both our peoples, and we're no closer to understanding why the Zarquin elders were willing to go to such extremes." Zura's hand found Elara's, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged the gap between their species. "We'll find the answers, Elara. Together." Suddenly, Marcus let out a whoop of triumph. "I've got it." The encryption's cracked. The bridge erupted into action as the crew gathered around Marcus's station. Streams of alien text and diagrams flowed across the screen, telling a story that left them all stunned. "By the cosmic void," Zira whispered, her grip on Elara's hand tightening. "It can't be." But it was. The truth, hidden for millennia, now lay bare before them. The Zarquin and humans weren't just similar species, they were genetically linked. Eons ago, a spacefaring civilization had seeded both Earth and the Zarquin homeworld with life, part of a grand experiment in evolution. The genetic disorder, Marcus mused, his eyes wide with realization. It's not just affecting the Zarquin, it's in our DNA too, just dormant. Elara's mind raced with the implications. So the elders weren't just looking for a cure for themselves. They were trying to save both our species, Zira finished, her voice a mix of awe and sorrow. The revelation sent shockwaves through the unity. Human and Zarquin alike grappled with this new understanding of their shared heritage. But for Elara, it was a call to action. "Set a course for Earth," she commanded, her voice ringing with determination. "It's time to bring this truth to light." The journey to Earth was fraught with tension. The Unity's advanced cloaking technology kept them hidden from most sensors, but close calls with patrolling ships from both Earth and Zarquin space had everyone on edge. As they approached the Sol system, Elara gathered her unlikely crew in the ship's main hall. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with Zarquin, united by their shared ordeal and the weight of the truth they carried. "What we've discovered changes everything," Elara began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "But knowledge alone isn't enough. We need to make both our peoples understand, to see beyond centuries of fear and mistrust." Zara Okafor, the weapons specialist, spoke up. "With respect, Captain, how do you plan to do that? We're still considered criminals by Earth Command." A sleek smile played across Elara's lips. "Sometimes, the best way to be heard is to make a lot of noise." The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. As the Unity approached Earth, they'd broadcast their message on every frequency, flooding communication channels with the truth about humanity's origins and their connection to the Zarquin. Predictably, chaos ensued. Earth's defense systems went into overdrive, scrambling ships to intercept the alien invaders. But Elara had counted on this reaction. "Lex," she called out to their pilot, "time for some fancy flying. Keep us just out of weapons range, but visible to every eye on the planet." What followed was a cosmic dance, with the Unity weaving through Earth's defenses like a comet streaking across the sky. Millions watched from the ground as the alien ship performed impossible maneuvers, always staying just ahead of Earth's fastest interceptors. "Captain," Rage's voice came over the comms, tense with excitement, "we're being hailed. It's the United Earth Council." Elara took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. This was the moment everything hinged on. "On screen," she commanded. The stern face of Admiral Helena Vasquez, head of the UAC, filled the view screen. "Captain Chen," she said, her voice cold, "you are in violation of dozens of Earth laws. Surrender immediately, or we will be forced to take lethal action." Elara met the Admiral's gaze unflinchingly. "With respect, Admiral, I think you'll want to hear what we have to say first." Without waiting for a response, she nodded to Marcus, who began transmitting the data they'd uncovered. For several tense minutes, there was silence as the UEC processed the information. Then, incredibly, Admiral Vasquez's expression softened. "Captain Chen," she said, her voice hushed with awe, "if this data is accurate." "It is, Admiral," Elara confirmed. "And there's more. We have Zarquin refugees aboard, including some of their top scientists. They're willing to work with us to find a solution that benefits both our peoples." The next few hours were a whirlwind of negotiations, explanations, and cautious hope. As the truth spread across Earth, public opinion shifted dramatically. What had started as fear of an alien invasion transformed into a groundswell of support for cooperation and shared scientific endeavor. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Admiral Vasquez delivered the news they'd been hoping for. "Captain Chen, the United Earth Council has agreed to grant amnesty to you and your crew. Furthermore, we're extending an official invitation to the Zarquin representatives for a summit to discuss our shared future." A cheer went up throughout the Unity. Elara felt a weight lift from her shoulders, only to be replaced by the warm embrace of Zira. As human and Zarquin celebrated together, Elara realized that this was only the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of diplomatic meetings, scientific conferences, and media appearances. Elara and Zira found themselves at the center of a global fascination, that unlikely partnership a symbol of the new era dawning for both species. But amidst the chaos, they found moments of quiet togetherness. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the glittering skyline of New Geneva, Elara turned to Zira. "I never thought it would turn out like this," she said softly, gesturing to the city below, where humans and Zarquin walked side by side. "When I came to rescue you, I had no idea we'd end up changing the course of history." Zira's iridescent skin shimmered in the twilight as she took Elara's hand. "Perhaps it was always meant to be this way. Two species, separated by light years, finding their way back to each other." As their eyes met, Elara felt a surge of emotion she could no longer deny. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned in, her lips meeting Zira's in a kiss that bridged the gap between worlds. When they finally parted, both breathless, Zira's eyes sparkled with joy and mischief. "Well, Captain," she said, her voice filled with warmth, "it seems we've made first contact in more ways than one." Elara laughed, pulling Zira close. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Human and Zarquin, no longer divided by fear and misunderstanding, but united in their shared heritage and hope for the future. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if celebrating the new chapter unfolding in the cosmic story of two species destined to shape the galaxy together. Cosmic convergence. The grand halls of the newly constructed Interstellar Unity Complex burst with an energy unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Delegates from every corner of human-controlled space mingled with their Zarquin counterparts, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic cooperation. At the center of it all stood Captain Elara Chen and Zira, their hands clasped in a gesture that had become a symbol of hope for both species. They were no longer just individuals, but the embodiment of a dream, a future where the stars themselves were the only limit to what their united civilizations could achieve. "Are you ready for this?" Elara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zira's iridescent skin shimmered with anticipation. "As ready as one can be to rewrite the future of two species," she replied, a hint of her usual humor coloring her words. Before Elara could respond, a hush fell over the assembly. Admiral Helena Vasquez, now serving as Earth's primary ambassador to the Zarquin, approached the central podium. Her weathered face bore the gravity of the moment as she addressed the gathered dignitaries. "Esteemed colleagues, honored guests," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "We stand at the precipice of a new era. For too long, our peoples were separated by the vast gulfs of space and misunderstanding. But today, we take the first step towards a shared destiny." As the Admiral continued her speech, Elara felt a subtle vibration against her wrist. She glanced down at her comm band, seeing an urgent message from Dr. Marcus Reynolds. Her brow furrowed in concern. "Zira," she whispered, careful not to disrupt the proceedings, "something's wrong. Marcus needs us in the lab immediately." With practiced discretion, they slipped away from the main gathering, their absence noted only by a few trusted allies. As they hurried through the complex's winding corridors, Elara couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. The doors to the advanced xenobiology lab hissed open, revealing a scene of barely contained chaos. Marcus stood at the center, his usually meticulously styled hair in disarray, surrounded by holographic displays filled with rapidly scrolling data. "Thank the cosmic void you're here," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "We've made a breakthrough in understanding the shared genetic disorder, but, well, you need to see this for yourselves." With a gesture, Marcus expanded one of the holographic models. It showed a complex DNA strand, sections of it pulsing with an angry red glow. "This is a dormant disorder in human DNA," he explained, his words tumbling out in a rush. "We thought we had decades before it would become active, but we were wrong. The increased interaction between our species, the exposure to Zarquin energy fields, it's accelerating the process exponentially." Zira stepped closer to the display, her scientific mind quickly grasping the implications. "How long?" she asked, her melodic voice tight with concern. Marcus swallowed hard. "At the current rate, 6 months, maybe less. After that, both our species face extinction," Elara finished, the weight of this new threat settling on her shoulders. For a moment, the lab was silent save for the soft hum of equipment. Then, Zira's eyes lit up with a familiar determination. "But this also means we have a unique opportunity," she said, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. "If exposure to each other is accelerating the process, then perhaps the cure lies in further combining our genetic structures," Marcus finished, catching on to Zira's train of thought. "It's brilliant, but also incredibly dangerous. We'd be talking about fundamental changes to both species at a genetic level." Elara's mind raced with the implications. "And we'd have to convince both our governments to take an enormous leap of faith," she added. "How do we even begin to propose something like this?" As if in answer to her question, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Elara's comm band lit up with multiple emergency signals. "Captain Chen," Zara Okafer's voice cut through the chaos. "We've got incoming bogies. A lot of them. Looks like the Zarquin hardliners have decided to crash the party." Elara's combat instincts kicked in immediately. "Zara, coordinate with Earth Defense. I want a perimeter established around the complex. Marcus, secure this data and prep for emergency evac. Zira, you're with me." As they raced back towards the main assembly hall, Elara's mind whirled with possibilities. This attack could shatter the fragile alliance they'd worked so hard to build, or it could be the catalyst that truly united their peoples against a common threat. They burst into the hall to find a scene of controlled chaos. Admiral Vasquez was already organizing a defense, her years of military experience shining through in this crisis. "Captain Chen," the admiral called out, "glad you could join us. We've got rogue Zarquin ships breaching the atmosphere. They're jamming most of our long-range communications." Elara quickly assessed the situation. "Admiral, we have intel that changes everything. The genetic threat, it's accelerating. We need to evacuate key personnel to a secure location where we can continue our research." The Admiral's eyes widened as she grasped the gravity of the situation. "Understood. I'll authorize whatever resources you need. But first, we need to deal with these attackers." As if on cue, the ceiling of the Grand Hall shimmered and became transparent, revealing the battle raging in the skies above. Sleek Zarquin ships engaged with Earth's defense forces in a deadly dance of energy beams and explosions. Zira stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the aerial combat. "I can help," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "I know their ship designs, their tactical weaknesses." Admiral Vasquez nodded. "Do it." What followed was a masterclass in interspecies cooperation. Zura's intimate knowledge of Zarquin technology, combined with Ilara's strategic brilliance and Earth's defensive capabilities, turned the tide of the battle. As the last of the Rose ships were disabled or driven off, a cheer went up from the assembled delegates. Human and Zarquin alike had witnessed firsthand the power of their combined strengths. In the aftermath of the attack, as emergency teams secured the complex, Ilara found a moment alone with Zira. They stood before a window overlooking the city, the signs of battle still visible in the distance. "It's not going to be easy," Ilara said softly, taking Zira's hand in her own. "Convincing everyone to take this genetic leap, it's asking a lot." Zura's skin shimmered with a warm glow as she turned to face Ilara. "Nothing worth doing is ever easy," she replied. "But look at what we've already accomplished. We've brought two species back from the brink of war. We've uncovered the truth of our shared heritage. And now," she paused, her free hand coming to rest gently on Ilara's cheek. "Now we have the chance to forge a future neither of us could have imagined alone." As their lips met in a kiss that seemed to bridge galaxies, Ilara felt a surge of hope unlike anything she'd experienced before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, political opposition, scientific hurdles, or threats from those who feared change, they would face them together. The next morning, as the rising sun painted the sky in hues of hope, Ilara and Zira stood hand in hand before the assembled leaders of both species. With courage in their hearts and the future of two civilizations hanging in the balance, they prepared to propose the most audacious plan in the history of either world. The road ahead would be fraught with dangers and uncertainties. But as Ilara looked out at the sea of faces, human and Zarquin, united in their desire for survival and progress, she knew that together they could overcome anything the universe threw their way. This was more than just an alliance between species. It was the dawn of a new era for life itself, one where the boundaries between races blurred and a new, hybrid civilization would rise to claim its place among the stars. As Ilara began to speak, her voice strong and clear, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. But with Zira by her side and the combined strength of two species behind her, she was ready to shape the destiny of galaxies. The greatest adventure in the history of both Earth and Zarquin was about to begin. Stardust Symphony, the Nexus, a colossal space station orbiting at the Lagrange point between Earth and its moon, pulsed with an energy that defied description. It was here, in this marvel of joint human and Zarquin engineering, that the fate of both species would be decided. Captain Ilara Chen stood before a window that spanned the entire wall of her quarters, her reflection ghostly against the backdrop of stars. 5 years had passed since that fateful day when she and Zira had proposed their audacious plan to save both their peoples. 5 years of tireless work, political maneuvering, and scientific breakthroughs beyond imagination. "Thinking deep thoughts, my love." Zira's melodious voice broke through Ilara's reverie. The Zarquin scientist glided across the room, her iridescent skin shimmering with patterns that Ilara had learned to read like a second language. Right now, they spoke of nervous excitement. Ilara turned, drinking in the sight of her partner, still marveling at how their love had blossomed amidst galactic upheaval. "Just reflecting on how far we've come," she replied, reaching out to intertwine her fingers with Zira's, "and how far we still have to go." A chime from the comm system interrupted their moment. "Captain Chen, Ambassador Zira," the A's voice was calm but tinged with urgency. "Your presence is requested in the Genesis chamber. It's time." The walk to the heart of the Nexus was filled with a charged silence. Crew members, a mix of humans and Zarquin, nodded respectfully as they passed, their eyes filled with hope and trepidation in equal measure. The Genesis chamber was a triumph of science and art. A vast spherical room, its walls were lined with swirling patterns of bioluminescent algae, a visual representation of the DNA strands they were about to forever alter. At the center stood a pillar of pure energy, contained within fields of force that even 5 years ago would have been thought impossible. Dr. Marcus Reynolds greeted them at the entrance, his once black hair now streaked with distinguished gray. "Everything's ready," he said, his voice hushed with awe. "The genetic templates have been prepared, and the quantum harmonizers are at full power." Ilara nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "And the volunteers?" Marcus gestured to a series of pods arranged in a circle around the energy pillar. Each contained a being suspended in a glowing fluid, some human, some Zarquin, all heroes willing to be the first to undergo the transformation that would birth a new species. "They're ready," Marcus confirmed. "Vitals stable, minds at peace." Zira stepped forward, her hand never leaving Ilara's. "Then let us begin." What followed was a ceremony unlike any in the history of either species. As leaders and scientists from Earth and Zarquin space watched via secure quantum feeds, Ilara and Zira approached the control panel that would initiate the process. "People of Earth, people of Zarquin," Ilara began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber and beyond, to the billions watching across two worlds. "Today, we take a leap into the unknown. Not out of desperation, though the threat of extinction looms. Not out of fear, though the path before us is fraught with uncertainty. We take this step out of hope for a future brighter than either of our species could achieve alone." Zara continued, her musical tones a perfect counterpoint to Ilara's. "We have unlocked the secrets hidden in our shared DNA, a legacy left by those who seeded our worlds eons ago. Now, we use that knowledge not just to survive, but to evolve, to become something greater than the sum of our parts." Together, their hands hovering over the activation panel, they spoke as one. "Let this be the dawn of a new era. Let the symphony of stardust that flows through our veins sing a new song, one of unity, of boundless possibility, of life triumphant." With a shared breath, they initiated the sequence. The energy pillar flared to life, tendrils of coruscating light reaching out to envelop the pods. The volunteers within began to glow, their forms shifting in ways that defied easy description. It was beautiful and terrifying, a glimpse into the raw power of creation itself. For hours, the process continued. The algae on the walls pulsed in time with the energy flows, creating a hypnotic display that held the observers transfixed. Ilara and Zira never left their post, monitoring every fluctuation, ready to abort if anything went wrong. Finally, as the station's chronometers ticked over to mark a new day, the energy began to recede. The pods hissed open, releasing clouds of luminescent mist. The chamber held its breath as the first figure emerged. She was exquisite. Neither fully human nor Zarquin, but a harmonious blend of both. Her skin shimmered with subtle iridescence, while her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. As she took her first steps, it was with a grace that spoke of strength beyond normal human limits. One by one, the other volunteers emerged, each unique, yet all bearing the unmistakable markers of this new hybrid species. They gathered in the center of the chamber, looking at each other and then at Ilara and Zero with expressions of wonder. "How do you feel?" Ilara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The first to emerge, a woman who had once been Ilara's communications officer, smiled. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that sent shivers of joy through all who heard it. "Complete," she said simply. "As if I've finally become who I was always meant to be." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a cure for the genetic disorder that had threatened both species. It was an evolutionary leap forward, unlocking potential that neither humans nor Zarquin had dreamed possible. As the news spread across the galaxies, reactions were mixed. There was celebration and fear, awe and outrage. Some hailed it as the next step in cosmic evolution, while others decried it as an abomination against nature. But for Ilara and Zira, standing amidst the birth of a new species, the path forward was clear. This was just the beginning. The hybrid children of Earth and Zarquin would need guidance, protection, and a place to call their own as they grew into their newfound abilities. "You know what this means, don't you?" Zira said softly, her eyes never leaving the gathering of transformed beings. Elara nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. It means we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Good thing we work well together. As if to punctuate her words, a notification chimed on their shared datapad. New astronomical data had just come in, revealing a solar system at the edge of explored space. A system with not one, but two potentially habitable worlds, a perfect home for their new children to grow and thrive. Elara turned to Zira, seeing the same mix of excitement and determination in her partner's eyes that she felt in her own heart. "What do you say, Ambassador? Ready for another adventure?" Zira's laugh was like music, a preview of the symphony their new species would compose among the stars. "With you, my love, always." As they shared a kiss that bridged worlds and species, Elara knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They had rewritten the story of two civilizations, forged a future from the ashes of conflict, and given birth to a new hope for all sentient life. The Stardust Symphony had only just begun its first movement. The universe waited, breath held, to hear what melodies would follow.